Could you tell us about what you do?
So I'm an experimental psychologist working here at Oxford University, and I'm interested in the senses, in hearing and vision and touch, taste, pain, and how those senses get put together in people's heads. And in this building with a lot of neuroscience going on, which means we try and understand the rules that connect your eye to your ear to your nose to your mouth. And by understanding how the brain works and how the senses are connected, how you can use those insights to help companies and business design better tasting foods, safer cars, more stimulating packaging or advertising. In almost every aspect of daily life, the senses are involved, and hopefully by understanding the senses through psychology, you can improve the design.
What exactly is multisensory stimulation?
So multisensory stimulation, or multisensory perception, refers to the idea that we have 5 senses, or perhaps more: hearing, vision, touch, taste, and smell. And most of the time when we experience the world or products around us, they stimulate most, if not all, of the senses. So take a lovely meal, then it's got to taste right, it should have the right aroma or smell, it needs to look visually appealing, the crunch, the sound should be right, as should the texture, the mouth feel, or the fattiness in the mouth. So all the senses are involved in the perception of food. And that maybe is the most multisensory of our experiences. But elsewhere, if I think about some sort of packaging or something, say this bottle here, it's got a certain weight, so that's got a tactile perception. It's got a feel of roughness, so that's kind of, it's also got a sound I can hear, a colour, and it'll have a smell. So all the senses are again being involved in my perception of this product and its packaging. And a lot of the work that we do with companies now is trying to help them enhance the multi-sensory appeal of what they're offering. So that could be through changing the feel of the packaging so it feels softer, changing the sound, or changing the smell, or making sure that the smell you get matches the colour. So if this were to smell of strawberries but look brown, that wouldn't work. And those are the kind of problems we work on.
Could you give us some examples of your research?
A lot of our work brings together sort of work on flavour, tastes and smells and textures in food, together with work on the other senses of hearing and vision, and seeing how one interacts and influences the other. And for us, we've probably done most research recently on the sound to taste and flavour connection, partly because that's one that no one else thinks about, and partly because you have lots of fun doing it. So in the obvious end, we've done work on the Pringles potato chip, giving people 180 of these over the course of an hour, hungry undergraduates, and biting into them. And then we have a microphone that picks up the sound and plays it back and changes the sound as you're biting into the food. And by changing the sound you hear as you crunch, we can make crisps that seem crunchier, fresher, or should you want, staler and older. So that sort of taste and sound coming together in the texture of a food. But we've also done work on with chefs like Heston Blumenthal on the sounds of the sea, which is a seafood dish that comes to the table in the restaurant. Not just the dish, but the waiter will have in his other hand some headphones, and you'll hear the sounds of the sea, some seagulls overhead, the waves crashing on the beach. And we've done research together with the chef to show that people rate seafood as tasting better when you capture kind of the sound or the other atmospheric cues that you normally would expect with a food.
Is there such a thing as too much multisensory stimulation?
So there's a question when you see so many companies now trying to stimulate more of the consumers, the shoppers or the senses. Will we get to a stage where there's too much sensory information, sensory overload, people often call it. And you see that within particular senses. So in the laundry aisle of the supermarket, maybe there are too many smells coming from all those washing powders. Or a few years ago in England, it would be in Sunday supplement magazines where every other page smelt of something, and people started complaining and saying enough, and they've kind of disappeared now. So it is possible that there will be too much stimulation. But when you ask people or you probe further, those who are complaining about being sensory overload, it tends to be that there's too much visual information or too much noise, too many people talking, too many mobile phones ringing. Mostly they complain about auditory and visual overload, and very rarely do they say I'm getting too many smells or I'm getting too much touch or too many tastes. That doesn't really seem to happen. So we think it's more of a sensory imbalance, that if anything, it's an overload of the more rational, less emotional senses like hearing and vision, but an understimulation of smell, touch and taste, the more emotional senses.
What areas are you currently working on?
One of our big areas at the moment is working with car companies, where we try and use brain insights in order to help avoid or reduce accidents. So the situation we have is many drivers who are distracted, talking on the mobile phone or playing with the sat-nav, their eyes away from the road. So cars now will present warning signals to the driver saying, watch out, pay attention. And we've been working with companies like Toyota to try and see where is the best place to present warning signals, and should it be a light or a touch or a smell or a sound or some combination of those things to give the best way of getting a driver to lock on again and pay attention. And it turns out that the engineers in the company who'd been working there a long time were using red flashing lights, because red is danger and that seemed like a good thing. But it turns out there are special brain circuits that just monitor the space behind your head. And if you present a sound or a touch from just back here, somewhere just behind the back of the neck, then that triggers special brain circuits that get people to turn their head just like that. And so it turns out kind of counterintuitively that the best place for the warning signals might actually be behind the head. And it might be a sound and a touch rather than a light. So again, using brain insights about how the senses are connected in order to try and, in this case, reduce accidents.